If you are relocating to Minnesota, or even just thinking about relocating to Minnesota, then this video is for you. Relocations is something that I have personally specialized in for quite some time now. It's what I do better than anybody else, and I believe I have a lot of insight on how the process can work and how it works best, and maybe how it should work. So stick around. How's it going, friends? My name is Jesse Lynch, and I run the hardest working real estate team in the game. We're called To the Twin Cities, and you can check out our website, tothetwincities.com. But this YouTube channel, it's all about helping you find a place to call home, a place to land here in the beautiful Twin Cities of Minnesota. And that's whether you are buying a house for the first time, maybe a step up, you're moving from a small house, your first home, to another home, or if you're even selling homes, check out the home tours that we do on this channel. We do that for anybody who's listing a home with us, and they are sick, and they work very, very well for you as a seller. And of course, relocations, that's what we do. That's what we do better than anybody else. So if any of that sounds appealing to you, then do me a favor, do yourself a favor, subscribe to this channel and click that little bell so you can get notified every time we put out new videos just like this one. And if you wouldn't mind, give the video a thumbs up right now. I would appreciate that so much. And leave a comment of some sort. You can literally type right now, of some sort, period, send it out, and that will make me thrilled. And as always, if you have any desire to work with myself and my team, we would absolutely love to help. You can go to our website, tothetwincities.com. We have a contact form there that you can fill out in like 30 seconds or less, or you can shoot us an email directly to info@tothetwincities.com. It'll lead to the same spot, which is my inbox, so totally up to you. Or you can call or text the number on the screen. I really have no preference for how you get a hold of us. I just ask that you do. We love helping folks make this move. We love helping first-time home buyers. We really enjoy what we do, so get a hold of us and we will crush it for you. Sound good? Good. Let's dive in. Today we're talking what I think of as fundamentally a how-to guide for moving to Minnesota, right? And some of it maybe is somewhat specific to Minnesota, but mostly it's like, how do you relocate and what are some of the nuances of that? If you're working with a relocation company, some of those maybe provide some resources to you, but a lot of the people that we help aren't, and they are, are like, well, how do we do this? How does this happen? How do we move from maybe the West Coast, maybe Florida, Texas? Literally, we've helped people from all over. We've helped people from Thailand, we've helped people from Switzerland. Yeah, it's been pretty cool. But how do you move from somewhere thousands of miles away to the Twin Cities without it being a nightmare? It's all good. Again, we help a lot of people do this. I think, first of all, you're here on this channel. I said it already, but subscribe and go down the rabbit hole on this channel. We have so much information on this channel. I've been making videos for more than 3 years, and primarily about relocation, about Minnesota, to provide as much value as possible to people before they even reach out to me, right? Before I even meet them. The goal is to be as helpful as possible and as thorough and interesting as possible. So make sure you do that. You can also follow us on Instagram at To the Twin Cities. That's kind of like a micro version of what we're doing on this channel. Just little snippets of the Twin Cities, little helpful ideas. Feel free to do that. I'd appreciate that. Maybe say, hey, and you found us from this video on that Instagram, right? Something like that. I don't know. But like most things, you're probably here because you're doing some research, right? You're trying to figure out what the heck you're gonna do when you move or as you move. How does it work? So hey, you're here doing some research. Good on you. You'll get a little bit further for this video, and you'll continue to feel more and more comfortable with the idea as you follow the steps in this video and as you continue to kind of go down the learning path that is this channel. And I think once you've done some of that, one of the things that you really have to ask yourself is, do I intend to rent a home when I get to Minnesota, or do I intend to buy a home? And I think you really should consider which one is the smarter option, right? I think some people do rent because it feels easier, but I would argue that it's not necessarily that much easier, if any easier, especially if you intend to buy within 6 months or within a year of you getting here. Then you have to move twice, and a lot of people would love to avoid moving at all costs. And by the way, speaking of cost, moving costs money, and so you might actually be a lot better off in the long run, kind of the short-term run to buy when you get here. And again, there's a lot of things that we can do to make you more comfortable to do that. But maybe you never intend to buy a home in Minnesota, right? Okay, that's fine. Hopefully this video can still be helpful to you, what we tend to do, but at least you know that, and that sort of checks a few boxes. Let me get this out of the way though. The first thing, if you're a renter, the things that people don't expect are where people find homes in the Minnesota market. Primarily, I would say Facebook Marketplace is a great resource to finding a rental home or apartment. Also, Craigslist, really good resource for that. I think those two are places that people are often surprised by. People from the East Coast, like Northeast, I think that's a pretty rare thing. And then sort of the Western Coast as well, that aren't necessarily using those platforms. But then, of course, there are things like Zillow. Zillow's wrong all the time. And there's very misleading ads all the time in Zillow for, you know, studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom. You call them and they only have a 2 bedroom, right? And it's twice your budget. So be aware of that. HotPads is literally owned by Zillow, so it's gonna have a lot in common with that. Not to say that you can't look there, just don't trust like, oh, look at this. This place has a 2 bedroom and that's what I need. Don't trust it. You're gonna have to call to verify pretty much any one of those listings. And of course, apartments.com, things like that. We actually, as a team, man, I've really been struggling with this. We've been thinking about adding like a rental service, but we don't think it's really necessary. I'm curious if you would leave a comment, would you pay some money to have somebody help you to sort of hold your hand through the rental process because you are doing so remote? When I will say up front, you don't have to. Right? There are maybe risks involved with doing it while you're not here at all that maybe somebody helping with would help get rid of some of that risk. But again, plenty of people never pay anybody to help them with that process and they get the job done. So would that be of interest to you with laying that out of like, you don't necessarily have to? And one thing which I think is a pretty common dynamic is that you maybe want to buy, you're hoping that you can buy, but you're also quite unsure. It's all good. I think these next steps can help you work through that. But if you are hoping that you can buy, we literally, on our website, we have a box. I added the box of hoping to buy. There's like, you know, are you gonna rent, buy, or are you hoping to buy? I added that because I think a lot of people are hoping that they can buy, but they aren't totally sure. So if that's the goal, it's all good. I think the next step should be the same, whether you know you're in a position to buy or are hoping you're in a position to buy, which is reach out to us and we will begin to help you work through that process. And when you reach out to us, again, website, you can the contact form there, or shooting us an email or calling or texting or whatever. However you reach out to us, ultimately our goal will be to figure out a time where we can set up a Zoom call with you, especially if you're out of town. If you happen to be in town and you're like, I'm just watching this video, if that's you by chance, leave a comment. That would be very cool. If you just happen to be in town and you're like, man, how do I do this? I'm in town for a certain amount of time. That's crazy. But yeah, of course, get a hold of us. If you're in town, we can meet in person, but most of the folks who are relocating are not in town at this point. So then we try to set up a Zoom call, and that is usually gonna last somewhere between an hour and 2 hours. Probably hour and a half is the sweet spot. I think people start to fatigue a little bit of information fatigue any longer than that. And frankly, 1 hour is almost never quite enough. It kind of feels like we're cramming in some information that's actually very, very important. So about an hour and a half long Zoom call. And obviously we'll figure, it's just like, hey, when does it work for you? It doesn't have to be any harder than when does that work for you? In that Zoom call, we'll talk about a bunch of things. We'll talk about the home that you hopefully want. We'll talk about, lending. Have you figured that out? Or is that something you still need to figure out? All good. We have lenders who we absolutely love to work with. They don't sponsor these videos or anything, but we love to work with them. They aren't like a sponsor or anything like that, but I really, really love to work with them. I've worked with them since I started in real estate, and we built a really, really great relationship. Some of the beauty of it is I can call them at, maybe they don't love it, but I can call them at 9 p.m. on a Sunday, right? I can call them at 9 p.m. on a Friday, and they will answer. I can call them at, 9 a.m. on a Sunday, and they'll also answer. And that availability is really, really crucial, and I think that relationship that we built with them has proven to be extremely, extremely valuable to us, but really with the folks that we're helping purchase a home here in the Twin Cities. So we'll talk through all of that detail. A whole bunch of information will be thrown your way. We'll kind of discuss some of your motivations, some of the requirements of where you want to live, some of the things that you're looking for in a neighborhood. Is it, walkable to shops? Are you looking for, suburban new development? Okay, those are going to be pretty different things, and we'll be really good at helping you pinpoint probably quite a few areas. Make a long list of things that may or may not do the trick, and then you can continue to dial that in by way of watching videos on this channel, by doing research on your own, however you want to do it, looking at crime maps, a bunch of different things that will help you whittle that down to a short list. And I would say this next step is not an absolute requirement, but I would say most people do it, and I would say it is also an ideal. If it's in the cards for you, a recon trip, that's what we call it, I don't know, a research trip is very, very helpful. And a big part of that is you've whittled down to the short list digitally, right, remotely. The Zoom call with us is going to sort of begin to whittle it down to a long list. And then as you are looking at homes that fit your budget and your criteria, you'll say, all right, does that actually look like the kind of home that I want? You can also do all sorts of research online. I've heard people literally say, oh yeah, I get a lot of my information from Twitter. I don't know about that. But then I've also, heard people say that they found us by way of Reddit. So shout out to that Reddit community for posting anything that we're doing at all. And then one thing I would love to note, a new thing that we've just added is a Facebook group just called the To the Twin Cities Facebook group. It's for folks who we've already helped move here, and then maybe folks who are considering a move here can go in, ask questions, and I think some of those things, they can give you a different perspective, a perspective that maybe I can't provide you because of who I am, where I'm at in life, but hopefully some of those other folks in that group can give you some of the perspective that you're looking for. And I'm going to put a link down in the description for that. I think that would be very, very valuable. And feel free to introduce yourself, ask some questions, or just lurk in the background. But give some posts a thumbs up if you wouldn't mind. So the recon trip. Okay, you've whittled it down to a short list. That short list could very well be 10 suburbs, 10 neighborhoods within the Twin Cities. So it might not be that short of a list, but at least you're not just looking at the whole metro on a map or on Zillow and you're like, well, okay, I mean, that looks cool, but I have no context for what the neighborhood is like and if it's the right neighborhood for me or any of that. So hopefully that short list is narrowed down to a tolerable short list. And then for this recon trip, I think there's a few ways to go about it. Some people want to just be on their own, drive around and just feel it out, right? Spend some time in those neighborhoods, maybe walk around, get the vibe, right? And really immerse themselves that way. Other people want to look at home. Other people would like a little bit more of like a guided tour, right? And for the clients that we're helping, that is something that we do. We like to drive around and just give a tour, hey, this is what this is. If you're living here, this is probably where your conveniences will be so you can feel what that drive feels like, etc. That's a very, very immersive way to go about it. It's something that we can only do for the clients that we are actively helping because it takes so much time. Although I will say I've tried to consider creating a service that people could pay to have a tour like that, a sort of home buying, neighborhood finding tour, but I don't know. If you have any interest in that, leave a comment. I think it's maybe a little too specific. I don't know what people would even search for. And then with that, if we're showing people around, one of the things that they can do is actually step foot in homes in those neighborhoods alone too, right? If you are doing everything on your own, you want to just take in the area, drive around and not, have the tour guide sort of situation. You could also go to some open houses if one coincides with when you're there in a neighborhood that you actually like, right? So I think there's a pretty good combination of options there, but I do think potentially going into homes and doing some sort of tour can be really helpful. I found that when people actually go into the home, that means they can maybe go into the backyard. They can feel, okay, what does this neighborhood feel like in the backyard, right? If I'm hanging out on this, deck, if this is my home, what does that feel like? Is that what I want? And then also, I'm looking at these homes from the 50s. Do I actually like those? Do I think they look cool on photos, but then I don't like them in real life? Or maybe it's a new build. Do I like how new builds feel, right? They feel very different than a home from the 20s. And not just because they're new, but the layouts are so different. The materials feel different, right? Is that for you? I think that will be helpful to you getting closer to where you want to be. And then I think one thing that some people try to do in this recon trip, which definitely can work, and I'm all for it. If that's something that you feel really, really hell-bent on doing, if actually finding the home is something that you're like hell-bent on trying to do in that weekend or week that you're here for that recon trip, it's definitely something we can help you with. It's something I've done. I once showed a couple 39 houses over the course of a weekend because that's all really they had, and they really wanted to find a house when they were out there. And now that can be difficult because sometimes you find a house you love, but you aren't prepared to make the offer that is required to get it accepted, and the level of competition can be difficult. Those folks happen to be in a sort of higher upper echelon of price bracket where the process is a little bit different. It's a little more like shopping for a car, right? Where you like, I'd like that one, please. Whereas in a more competitive part of the market, it's not like that. It's more of an auction, right? And maybe you'll win. It's more of a blind auction, actually. Maybe you'll win, maybe you won't. We're very good at getting offers accepted, but there is a degree of, hey, you got to make an offer that you're comfortable with, even though maybe we know more precisely what it should be to get the offer accepted, but that isn't always directly correlated with what a person is willing to make an offer on. So some people want to find that home right away and in that recon trip, and other people are more seeing it as a recon trip, knowing that, okay, we're going to come out here, get that short list narrowed down very specifically to specific areas, specific types of homes, or maybe broad type of home in a specific area, something like that. And then from there, we can do a lot of the legwork on our own with you just kind of getting back to life, going to work, all that. And then one area that I think we absolutely shine in, I think it's something that we really have tried very, very hard to get just so exceptional at, is what we think of as virtual showings of homes, right? This channel has virtual tours of neighborhoods where they're edited and trying to be, entertaining, but also very helpful, right? We talk about kind of the nitty gritty, we talk about the pros and cons, all that. But the virtual showing is much more unedited. Hey, we're just walking in, taking a camera, pointing out everything that we see wrong with the house, trying to be, as close to an inspector as we can be in what is a much shorter amount of time than an inspector, and not necessarily having access to, turning certain things on, that kind of thing. We certainly don't have a camera to put down the sewer pipe, anything like that. But we try really hard to go in and be as critical and as observant as possible. We have sort of systems down to where we show a room, we try to get the idea of how an area flows together, so that when you're looking at a photo on HomeSpotter, by the way, HomeSpotter, better than Zillow, link in the description. Make sure you check that out. It'll be branded with my name, but whatever, you can do whatever you want with it. But on HomeSpotter, the photos, the listing photos, they can be deceiving, right? And not always by on purpose, but sometimes it just comes across one way and it appears a different way in person and in the videos that we're taking. Again, we're really pointing out flaws, too many cosmetic flaws. I think of those as canaries in the coal mine. It's like, hey, they cut a bunch of corners on these things. What else have they cut corners on? But then we'll also point out things that are extremely common that you see over and over and over again, but just because we don't want you to be surprised by things that were very obvious if you were there in person, we go out of our way to disclose to you in video form everything that we see wrong so that you won't be surprised, right? The last thing that I want, the last thing that the team wants is to get a home under contract for somebody. They fly out during inspection or drive out or whatever, and then they don't like the house, right? Or that they feel that the house was misrepresented. That literally is a nightmare to me. It's like the last thing that I want, because I truly believe that it'll all come out in the wash. we shouldn't sugarcoat a home to try to get you under contract, because you're gonna find out, right? You're gonna come see it in person and realize that we misrepresented. So absolutely, that is the goal, to not misrepresent a home, to disclose everything that we see, and just so you feel like, okay, cool, this was a accurate representation of this home, and now you can have the confidence to fly out, to put an offer in. And I think you will find, after watching a bunch of these virtual showings, the thorough nature of our virtual showings will provide you confidence to make an offer. But one of the things that I think a lot of people don't know about or don't think is a possibility is that we can do all these virtual showings. We can show you 10 homes, 20 homes. If you get an offer accepted, cool. If you don't, we move on. We keep looking. And once you get a house under contract, contingent upon inspection, then you can fly out or drive out during that inspection, and we can try to schedule the actual inspection for when you're here so that you can step foot in the home, feel it out. Does this house feel like what it looked like in the video? And then of course you can also chat with the inspector during the walkthrough. They can point out problems. You can say, what does that mean? You can say, how do I deal with that? And that will provide you a wealth of information. Now, some people don't do that. And now some people don't actually fly out, right? They do the recon trip. Most people, I would say, do the recon trip, and then they look for homes virtually, and then they get an inspector. We have inspectors with whom we really like to work, but we really do love working with them. We trust them. And one thing, if you don't come out, we like to try to show up and do another sort of virtual inspection walkthrough with the inspector, where you can ask questions, we can ask questions, we can try to clarify what you're seeing, through the camera. And I think that's a way that a lot of people feel comfortable enough to make something like this happen. And then from there, whether or not you come out, then we're basically in an escrow period, which is kind of a holding pattern. The lender's doing their work, title company's doing their work to make sure that the seller actually, can be selling the home. Lenders making sure that you are good, you're in a financially good enough situation to purchase the home. And they're also getting an appraisal on the home to what I think of as sort of help justify, or see if they can justify, the purchase price on the home. So I think there's a lot of these checks in place that would happen whether or not you were here in person, but they sort of happen in the background. And that's largely in that escrow time, from under contract to closing, and primarily from after your inspection contingency to closing. And then as a team, again, we help a ton of people from out of state. We have figured out ways to close virtually, right? And actually a lot of people are not in Minnesota on their closing date, the day that they take possession of the home, because life, right? There's too many moving parts, and maybe they're going to come out in a day or two after that, or maybe they're going to come out in a week, 2 weeks, a month, something like that. We've helped people who probably have sat with their home empty for as many as maybe 6 weeks, maybe as long as 2 months. If that's the case, if you happen to be in that scenario, then we are more than happy to, as a team, swing by occasionally, right? We can't go there every day. We just don't have time for that. But occasionally, maybe bi-weekly, something like that, swing by just to make sure that the home is in good repair and nothing crazy is going on. So if that's kind of another potential fear of yours, then hopefully that helps quell that a little bit. I think a lot of people go on vacation for 2 weeks at a time, and it's not that big of a concern that something will go wrong with their house. So if one of us can swing by on occasion, then hopefully that feels kind of similar. At least somebody's there checking on the home, making sure nothing crazy is happening. And then whenever you happen to be there, if it's closing day, cool. If it's a week, 2 weeks, 2 months after closing, all good. We get to meet up with you, have a little bit of a celebration, and give you the key to your home, and then now you have relocated to Minnesota. And I also just put out a video called The Do's and Don'ts of Visiting Minnesota, which is really about the recon trip, right? Of how do you optimize your time in that recon trip. For one, I would say getting a hold of us first, having a Zoom call with us first, allowing us to help you narrow down that short list, or maybe that medium list, and then when you're actually here in person, you can narrow it down to a short list. I think that is a really, really helpful step. But do watch that video. If you haven't done so yet, check out the do's and don'ts of visiting Minnesota. It's not just for tourists. I will say it's very specifically for folks like yourself who are thinking about relocating here, right? It's not just, hey, what do I go do when I hang out there? It's like, how do I maximize my time on that recon trip? Sound good? As always, if you want to work with us, tothetwincities.com. We have a contact form there that you can fill out in like 30 seconds or less, or you can shoot us an email directly to info@tothetwincities.com. And or call or text the number on the screen if you wouldn't mind. And if you've made it this far, subscribe to the channel. I think you'll find that there's a ton of value for you on this channel. Subscribe, click the bell to get notified so you can see when we put these videos out. And if you wouldn't mind, give the video a thumbs up. If you're still here, I would appreciate that so much. And leave a comment of some sort. Again, it could be of some sort, or it could be a question directly related to this video or anything. Thanks for watching. One last plug for that Facebook group, To the Twin Cities, link in the description. Check it out. All right, bye-bye.